Sales doesn't need to be hard or overcomplicated. Now, that's not my way of saying that sales is easy. Rather, I'm saying that you can have a successful career in sales if you develop a process and execute on it consistently. This channel is dedicated to what a sales process framework could look like and showcasing the different best and worst practices around the different steps of that sales process. The intention is to publish short, weekly videos that are easily digestible with clear action items that you can begin doing today. Welcome to Sunday Sales Staples. Today's topic revolves around outbound prospecting, the act of reaching out to potential customers in order to convert them into paying customers. More specifically, we are going to cover buyer personas and why it's important to prospect each one of them a little bit differently. If you have never heard of the term buyer persona before, then that's okay, and we'll cover that in the definition on the next slide. However, please note that instead of referring to them as buyer personas throughout the video, I'm going to abbreviate to BPs just to help save some time. A BP is a description of someone that would benefit from the value of your solution, your product, or your service. It's a representation of your ideal client or target audience. Identifying your BP helps improve personalization when conducting your outreach. It also aids in the overall customer experience, leading to more successful deals when all parties are satisfied in the end. There are a variety of ways that companies will craft their BPs. However, the most common way is to bucket them by department. You will have BPs for people in finance, folks in marketing, decision makers in people operations, individuals from revenue leadership, and so on. And before we get into the best practices of BPs, I do want to share a story. Years ago, I was working with a difficult account executive named Thomas. I have mentioned him in prior videos, and for the sake of anonymity, Thomas is not his real name. When outbound prospecting, Thomas believed that he should be sending out generic messaging that covered the features and benefits of our product to BPs in all of the different departments. In other words, everyone received the same messaging. He continually produced mediocre results and would get frustrated when he wasn't creating the same amount of pipeline as his counterparts. On the other hand, we had an account executive named Catherine. Again, for anonymity, Catherine is not her real name. She would create specific content for each decision maker's BP when sending out her cold emails and have different talking points for her cold calls. For people in finance, Catherine would talk about ROI or money saving benefits. For people in operations, she would talk about the time saved or the improvement of operational workflows. And for people in the C-suite, she would talk about the gap between their status quo and the future state if they implemented our service. Catherine was the top producing account executive quarter after quarter. There were plenty of other skills that drove her success. However, when I looked up her prospecting metrics, they were light years ahead of the team. Catherine understood that people only wanted to hear how this service was going to affect them and their roles. We ended up replicating Catherine's sales motion for the rest of the team, and we started seeing results within weeks. Throughout the years, I have seen a number of best practices around buyer personas, but here are some of the ones that have worked best for me. First is a BP matrix. Hopefully, before joining a new sales organization, your company should have built out a buyer persona matrix that outlines each BP and the different value propositions that are relevant to them. Make sure to bookmark this content so that you can easily reference it as you're outbound prospecting. If your company has not built out a BP matrix, then be proactive and make one yourself. Make sure to collaborate with your counterparts in sales leadership when putting it together so that the rest of the team can begin using it immediately. And you should be able to find examples of BP matrices online. However, I will show you a template that has worked for me in the past in the next section, so make sure to stick around. Next is doing your homework. After building out the BP matrix, it's still important that you do your homework on each individual buyer persona before you reach out to them. You may be reaching out to a CFO and you might know that they want to hear about the financials of your service. However, you should still look at their LinkedIn and Google their name to see if there's any other relevant pieces of information that you can bring to the conversation. Maybe the CFO used to be a COO at a previous role and they want to hear about the operational piece of your product. Maybe they were recently recognized for a specific award. Whatever it might be, make sure to bring it up in conversation if it's relevant. And after building out your BP matrix and doing some homework, you're going to be having conversations with these BPs when you're cold calling. Even though you have an idea of what they will care about, you should still strive to have an open mind and learn about any other pain points that are top of mind for them. Does the CFO also oversee the marketing department? If so, then don't spend all of your time talking about the financial metrics of your solution, but you should also include the marketing metrics that will affect their business if it's applicable for your product. Next is, as you're having these discussions and learning, always make sure you relate it back to what's important to them. BPs will always ask themselves WIIFM, which stands for what's in it for me. And this means you can't just shove features down their throat. Rather, you need to talk about the value that your solution provides and how it's going to affect their specific role. And lastly, make sure you share any new insights with the rest of your team. Has the customer sentiment changed with your prospects over the last couple of weeks? Talk about it in your team meetings. What features have your prospects been mentioning that they would like to see in a future state of your product? Ping your product managers to let them know. Remember, you're the one who is having these conversations day in and day out, and you're the one gathering quality information from these prospects, but it's useless unless you share it. If your company doesn't already have a tool like a BP matrix for you to use with each of your decision makers, then you can use the following template to build a V1 and then work with others in your company to improve it. Here's the template that I have used at a few different startups to help get the ball rolling with these buyer personas. As you can see, the first thing you want in a BP matrix are the general details of that prospect. This includes their name, their title, the length at their current company, their location, and maybe a brief description of their professional background. This section can be filled out before you even make your first call or send your first email when you're conducting your homework. The next thing you want on your matrix is to identify if this individual will have the purchasing power required to implement your solution. A simple yes or no checkmark will suffice. Next are the prospect's pain points that your solution aims to solve. This list should be pre-populated for each BP. However, you should leave some room for answers that the BP provides for anything that you may not have heard before. Then you would list out the BP's goals. If they were to implement this solution, what is most valuable to them? Again, this list should be pre-populated based on the pre-work that you've done. However, you will also include a blank space for any new information that they share. In this section, you can even rank each goal on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being highest priority and 5 being lowest priority, so that you know which goals to focus on when you're giving them your proposal. Next, you would want to have talking points to the specific BP. Was there a recent regulatory change in their space that will affect their decision-making criteria? Did the prospects company recently announce an acquisition of another firm? Keep refreshing this section every so often so that you stay up to date with current information. And last are key bits of personal information that you may extract from the conversation. Maybe they shared that they like to travel internationally at least twice a year. Maybe they are preparing for an Ironman next month. Or maybe they pride themselves on being an amazing at-home cook. Whatever it is, jot down these notes in the BP matrix so that you can have handy topics of conversation the next time you connect. This template should get you 75% of the way there when creating a BP matrix for the first time. Your teammates in management may add bits and pieces to the V1, and I encourage you to work on evolving this matrix as you go along. This customized approach to buyer personas will help you start off on the right foot when you begin having conversations with these decision makers, and it is a best practice to have one of these handy when you're outbound prospecting. That wraps up this week's quick overview of buyer personas, and I appreciate you checking out the video. If you want to dig deeper into BPs, I highly recommend checking out some articles that you can easily find on Google. Some people will have similar ideas to mine, and others will differ. At the end of the day, it's up to you to craft your own buyer persona strategy, but I do hope there were some key takeaways that you can begin using today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, sales doesn't need to be hard. While sales is becoming vastly more complex with metrics and data, your process doesn't need to be so convoluted that it isn't easily replicated. Keep coming back to the channel to learn more about how to simplify your process and win new business. And feel free to email me at sundaysalesstaples@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at Sunday Sales Staples. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next week.